January the 18th, ladies and gentlemen, getting closer and closer to Australia Day. But between now and Australia Day, I'll have the opportunity to talk with you from the dining room table. That'll be tomorrow, between 9 o'clock and 12, live streaming, and you can find us by just going to jeremycordeaux.com. Simple as that. And I will give you the phone number when you tune in, and you will be able to call us and talk about what you will. But as we come up to Australia Day, I think it's important that we keep remembering the significance of the day, and don't let these people howl us down for our patriotism. Very, very nice gentleman sent me a picture of a group of First World War soldiers. This was about 15, something like that. I don't have it here in front of me, it's on my phone. But 1915, First World War soldiers celebrating Australia Day, probably for the first time overseas, probably the first time they'd ever been away from home. I don't think people did a lot of travelling in the 1920s or the time before the war. But my correspondent said Australia Day was celebrated on the 26th of January 1915, if I've got the year right. And sort of, well, what does that do to your argument about 1949? Well, I have no doubt up until 1949 that 26th of January was celebrated as Australia Day. Then it was given real reason for celebration by becoming the date that Australia became a nation. 26th of January 1949. That was the thing about it, to my mind anyway. But thank you for all the stuff you send me. I'm very grateful for all the feedback. We were talking about health yesterday, and the truth of the matter, as I left you, I was choking. I think I got into trouble because I was pretending I was James Earl Jones. Anyway, health is terribly important. It's the most important thing. One's health. Well, Medicare in the beginning was supposed to be this miraculous socializing of medicine. For the third time, Medicare is failing. Well, Medibank in the beginning failed back in the 70s. Then the Hawke government's version failed. Now this one, because of all of this socialized medicine nonsense. You know, there's an old saying, I love it. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's so true. I mean, these people mean well, but they're not particularly bright. Medical care before, Medibank, Medicare, call it what you like, medical care was first class and affordable in Australia. Doctors didn't get rich, but no one went without. I know, because I was among the poor of the poorest at the time, growing up, before Gough Whitlam. What we have now is a shambles, for which none of these people in Canberra apologise. These social experimenters or whatever they are. It simply doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose. But we still have the Medicare levy. Yes, we do have the Medicare levy and a private health insurance levy as well. Bulk billing has almost disappeared, which was the whole point of this mess. The whole point. Free medical care. You pay the levy. It's not means tested. Everyone is given free medical care and free hospital care. No. No. When is this stupid government going to admit that Medicare has failed? The more money you pour into Medicare, the higher the costs will be. And they don't have the smarts to notice that. It's like childcare. Childcare, perfect example. Once affordable, now it is not. Thanks to Labor. Always hurting the people they pretend to help. This medical regime is really very similar to the Soviet Union in the 1960s, where before you saw a doctor, you had to see a bureaucrat. But for some reason, none of this surprises me at all. I mean, Gough Whitlam, whenever he spoke to me, he would call me Comrade Cordo. Amazing, truly amazing. Here in South Australia, we are governed by the socialist left of the Labor Party, as we are while these people in Canberra remain there the same. Let's see where we go. The Tiwi Islanders took Santos to the High Court. Do you hear about this? Do you read about it? How much does it take? How much does it cost to take somebody to the High Court? Anyway, the Tiwi Islanders, about 4 of them I think, took Santos to the High Court over a pipeline that was being built from the Timor Barossa gas fields to Darwin. Years and millions of dollars. And the judgment? In favour of Santos. The islanders and their lawyers argued that the pipeline would disturb underwater sacred sites. Underwater sacred sites? Well, the court ruled otherwise. Here's the point. Where did these people get the money to wage this senseless, stupid case? Millions and millions of dollars. Oh, silly me, I'm sorry. You know where they got the money? You and me. That's where. When is this nonsense going to stop? And when is the media going to do its job and ask why this huge waste of money is allowed to continue? You know, Warren Mundine, I believe Warren's going to be on the show on Friday, along with John Blake, and a few other surprises. That's my live streaming show tomorrow, 9 to 12, jeremycordo.com. I remember Warren Mundine saying Aboriginal people have 55% ownership of the mainland of Australia. Their plan, he was saying, their plan is 75% at least. And you and I have sat back and allowed this country to be stolen out from underneath us, when in actual fact we are all Australians, black or white, and should be absolutely equal in everything. You want land? You do what I did. You buy it. Anyway, we have created this. I'm not sorry. We haven't created this. Labor, and particularly Whitlam, and Lionel Murphy, and others of that era, they created this. Who do you think funded Eddie Mabo, which got the ball rolling? Oh, we did, of course. You know, a great part of that $40 billion that we give to Aboriginals is taken up by Aboriginal legal aid. There are no checks and balances. No one seems to care. A pipeline under the Timor Sea to generate billions of dollars, and these idiots spend our money trying to stop it. And we allow it. sacred bloody sites under the water. If you elect me, not that I'm running for office, I'd stop it in 30 seconds. I wonder where the Liberals are. I think they should develop some backbone. That's just me. Something completely different, as they used to say. Did you get a gift card for Christmas? A lot of people give Christmas cards with a gift card in them. Here's something. There are $1.4 billion worth of gift cards in drawers all over the country. $1.4 billion. Now, I think they're a wonderful idea. You give somebody the flexibility to get what he or she really wants or most needs. Great idea. But I read that part of the gift card concept is that lots of people won't cash them in. They just put them away and put them in a drawer, forget about them. Then there's a time limit. By the time you discover the gift cards under the socks, time's gone, time's expired. $1.4 billion is a lot of money. Money for jam. Get it coming and going. If ever you wanted to know how stupid a government and an opposition could be, here's the proof. I don't really have much time for either of them. Our lovely beaches. They're not ocean beaches, you understand. Tidal beaches, I guess. Nice and protected, but beautiful sand. And anyway, they suffer from erosion. Perfectly natural. Absolutely what happens in life. Now, the present government here in South Australia have a solution. At a cost of tens of millions of dollars a year, they truck sand. Yes, you heard right. They truck sand in to replenish the beaches. The Libs say, our plan is better. We have a pipeline and we will pump sand all the way along the coast to the beaches who need it. And this nonsense has been going on for years, and we have been paying for it. And more importantly, it doesn't work. Are you people barking mad? I'm talking about the government and the opposition. The coast and the beaches are part of the natural environment, subject to wind and tide. Just stay out of it. Or, oh, of course, it's probably a marginal seat. Silly me. And you guys, you're trying to curry favour at public expense. Hey, listen, it has got nothing to do with climate change, and the oceans are not rising. It is nature. And you won't hear that in the popular media. DP World, they control an awful lot of the comings and goings in Australia at Australian ports. Dubai Ports, DP stands for. Very, very big company. In fact, with Patrick's, they really control what comes into and goes out of this country. Very important people. Anyway, DP World is being held to ransom by the militant Maritime Union. And in doing so, of course, holding us to ransom. We are vulnerable now that we have, thanks to Gough Whitlam's policy to get rid of our local industries and our local production of just about everything, we are reliant upon supply chains. So when something comes along like this, we are very vulnerable. Waterside workers have decided they want $130,000 a year. It's hard work, I admit. Driving a crane, moving the containers. They don't do it physically, of course. Now, you remember Chris Corrigan and the Patrick's waterside dispute. which brought this country to its knees a few years ago. I don't think anyone went to jail over that, but a scandalous, absolutely scandalous misuse of union power and a demonstration of union corruption. I remember Chris Corrigan telling me, we talked to him regularly during this dispute on the air when I was at 5DN. I remember him telling me about people that he had to pay. He had to put a pay packet out, pay a whole bunch of people, even though they didn't work there, and those people didn't even exist. And that money went to the union. That was pure, unadulterated corruption, and again I say it, no one went to jail. But when you own the government, as the trade union movement owned Labour, hardly likely that the men in blue would come knocking at your door. What have we set up in this country? I don't know if I got time for any more.
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about having doubts about government and climate change, which of course is the favourite mantra of the federal government at the moment. Here's some proof positive of pure nonsense. There was a proposal, very recently, a proposal to build a wind farm. You know, green energy, an offshore wind farm at the port of Hastings in Victoria. The plan was to build our first and biggest offshore wind farm. Huge enterprise, huge wind farm. Essential to the Labour Party's view of cheap green energy, which of course always ends up being more expensive. Anyway, Tanya Plibersek, the minister in charge, vetoed the project. Why? Well, here's the kicker. The project would impact on the Western Port Ramsar wetland. Now, all of this expense and nonsense is about saving the planet, right? Tanya Plibersek is the Minister for the Environment, right? Should be a no-brainer. What this inept, silly person doesn't know or doesn't care about is that the wetlands that she was protecting produce the worst greenhouse gases in the world. Predominantly and mainly methane. Wouldn't you think, if any of this was about the planet, she or someone in her department would know that? If I know it, why don't they know it? They're paid to know it. Methane is incredibly dangerous. CO2, which is what all this alternative energy is trying to protect us from, is on the other hand plant food. We couldn't live without it. And here in Australia, let me give you those figures again. I did mention them last year. CO2, the real fly in the ointment here. CO2 is 0.004% of the atmosphere that we depend upon and breathe. Man's contribution to this is 3%. Australia's contribution is 1.3%. So this is the problem we're trying to fix at enormous expense. 1% of 3% of 0.004%. This whole thing is a massive fraud, which is destined to cost us $3 trillion and not produce a reliable grid. And where is the media to ask these questions, question these people? I don't know where they are, but they're certainly not doing their job, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave you with some dates and remind you again to join us tomorrow at the dining room table. JeremyCordeau.com, 3 hours. Interesting guests. God knows what's going to happen. I got a little plan, but I like that kind of, because, you know, predictable doesn't interest me much. Anyway, it's the 18th, as you know, 1882. A. Milne, English author of Winnie the Pooh books. He was born in Hampstead, Middlesex in 1882. He died in 1966. That was a good long life. The rights to Pooh, by the way, were sold to Disney by his son, who, interestingly enough, was called Christopher Robin. Well, Christopher Robin Milne, anyway. The first elements, this will appeal to you, Pete. The first elements, pardon me, of the First Fleet, carrying 736 convicts from England to Australia, arrives at Botany Bay to set up a penal colony. So that was the 18th of January, up the coast from Sydney Cove. Forgive me. 1888 was the year. Rudyard Kipling dies at the age of 70 in 1936. Captain James Cook stumbles over the Sandwich Islands. Sandwich Islands, of course, if I'm not wrong, I think the Sandwich Islands are the Hawaiian Islands. Yeah? And that was in 1778. Kevin Costner, American actor. Yellowstone. Silverado. Dances with Wolves. I loved that. That was good. Did you ever see that, Pete?
Oh, yes. A couple of times. Yeah.
Very long, bit ponderous in places, but I thought it was a very, very fine movie. Kevin Costner was born in 1955. I've yet to see Yellowstone, but then again, I won't pay to subscribe to stuff on television. I just don't believe in that. Bentley Motors Limited is founded by Walter Owen Bentley in London in 1919. Merged with Rolls-Royce later, and they've both been pretty close to each other for a long time. But of course, they're not now, because Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW and Bentley is owned by VW. So much for the war. What would you rather win, I wonder? Would you rather win the war or win the peace? I think the Germans won the peace. Cary Grant, British-born American actor, arsenic and old lace. He was born in Bristol. He died in 1986. He was born in 1904. Danny Kaye, whose real name was David Daniel Kaminsky, born in 1911 in Brooklyn. He died in 1987. The first use of a lie detector. It was in the Netherlands, and it was 1951. Paul Keating, the 24th Prime Minister of Australia, 91 to 96. He was born in Darlinghurst, New South Wales. Interesting character. Arrogant, very arrogant. I remember when I confronted him about sending restaurants broke. I had Decker's restaurant at the time, which did rely very heavily on the business luncheon trade. And I said to him in the studio, I've had to sack everybody. And he said, well, I'd rather have people moving paper around a dole queue than plates around a restaurant. But then again, he had a grand, fine taste in dining. Oh yes, and fine wine. and fine everything. Anyway, I'm going to stop before I get angry. Thank you very much for being with us with the Court of Public Opinion. We'll be back with the podcast and, of course, the posting on Facebook on Monday, and tomorrow live streaming jeremycordeaux.com from the dining room table, where my guests will be Warren Mundine and John Blakey. Believe in yourself. Peter Clayton, thank you. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Goodbye for now.